bringing my dad's aesthetic here to a site in Maine in itself was a design challenge, because I didn't want to ignore the local typology. Like, you have to respect that. I had to find a way to incorporate color into it. It was the only way that I'd get him to sign off on the house. Because if I didn't, I'd come back 6 months from now and it would be painted a million colors. So I either embrace it at the beginning, or I'm going to be forced, my hand's going to be forced later down the road. So it was important to kind of think about how to design color into this project from the beginning, and make it fit within the region that this home is being designed in.
Hello and welcome to Architecture, Design, and Photography. Today we have a kind of special episode. We're on site with a client in Idaho, Maine, which is one of the most romantic islands in Maine that I've been to. We're just in between lighting kind of time, so we thought we'd sit down and talk about whatever. So Noel Fedosh, architect from Los Angeles. Thanks for having us out to Idaho. How you doing?
I'm doing well. It takes a lot to get me out to Maine, so.
Well, yeah, it's like polar opposite ends of the country almost.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a huge change from Los Angeles. But you know, it is a beautiful place, like you said. It holds a lot of great memories to me.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the background of this project and this island as it applies to you. So this home, to give a little bit of background, was designed by Noel. And is a design for his father.
Correct.
And your father started bringing you out here when you were a kid. And so kind of take us through all that.
Exactly. So growing up, my family came up to Maine every Easter. It was kind of like just a ritual at that point. We'd go to Bar Harbor, we'd go hiking in Acadia, and one year we started coming to this island, which is actually has a part that is part of Acadia National Park. We were big hikers, so we would take the mailboat out to this island, which you came on.
Did you do the whole loop?
We would do the whole, as a kid, I would hike this entire island.
How many miles is the loop?
The loop road is 12 miles. So I mean, it's not a short hike. But as a kid, you kind of just love running around and exploring this island. So coming out here every year, you know, you get to know the place. You really get a connection with it, and our family we grew into having a very, very deep connection with the island. And we look forward to coming back to it every year. And every year we found a way to make it different. You know, some years we'd come and we'd stay at the bed and breakfast at the lighthouse, which is on the northern tip of the island. Some years we'd come with friends and we'd camp at the campsite at the southern tip of the island.
Around Easter? Around
Easter. Yeah, we were, I mean, I've camped in the most insane weather because of my dad. Like, he is just like, it's just, we're on a vacation, we're doing this. There's no, oh, it looks like it's gonna rain, we should postpone it. It's, you know.
Right now, my wife and I are thinking about hiking the northern side of Iceland, like late June, with our 2 kids.
That sounds amazing.
And like, I'm kind of thinking like, yeah, it could be strenuous, crazy, and everything else, but it's like one of those things that just bonds a family. Like, even if it gets really bad, that's going to be the bonding things that kids remember.
Oh, totally. So. And I think as a kid, you haven't grown up enough to realize that, you know, you're not as practical as an adult maybe to realize like, hey, maybe I shouldn't be going.
This is dangerous.
Maybe this is a bad idea. As a kid, you're like, this is so cool. This is such an adventure. Like, and you really just kind of get into it. So every time we came out to this island, it was something different. And you know, when I went away to college, obviously the trips with the family stopped. And then immediately after graduating, I moved to Los Angeles, and that was in 2006. So it was about 10 years ago that my dad called me up, said, hey, do you want to come back out to Maine and go to the island? You know, your sister will come, we'll just hang out, you know, it'll be a fun little, like a quick 2-day trip. So I flew back to Jersey. Me and my sister met me there. She was down in Virginia at the time. and my dad drove us up to this island, and we hiked from the dock, and we're coming down the road, and my dad's just like, oh, I think there's a trail here, and he just turns into the woods. There's clearly no trail. And I'm just like, okay, he's lost it. Like, what the hell are we doing? You know, I haven't been to the island in years. I'm like rolling my eyes. And we make our way to pretty much this spot. And my dad's like, well, what do you guys think? And I'm like, okay, it's great, Dad. I remember the island. It's an awesome place. You didn't need to bring me all the way here to ask me what I thought about the island. And he said, well, I own this now, and I want you to build a house on it, or design a house for me on it.
And when was this?
This was 10 years ago-ish, 10 years ago. So what's that, like 2009,
so
2008?
This project has been sitting in your head since then.
Oh, it has been a long project for many reasons.
Were you out of architecture school at that point? Or
I was working in Los Angeles at the time.
Okay, so this truly has been like...
This has been just a long process for several reasons. Obviously, I mean, it was a side project, you know,
Right.
doing it outside of my normal 9-to-5 job. So finding time for that. Doing a long distance project always has its challenges.
Yeah, so walk me through the different difficulties of a project like this. I mean,
Absolutely.
It's working with a family member, which, you know, no matter how golden and wonderful the family member is, it's still a family member, and there can be interesting things, but there can also be benefits that you know your dad really well.
Exactly.
And can design for him well. And then the difficulties of just designing and building on an island.
Yep.
You know? So go into that relational aspect of building, designing for a close family member.
Absolutely. The good thing about designing for my dad is that I've seen his personal aesthetic. I've grown up with it for my entire life. So if there's anyone that knows, could kind of boil down his aesthetic into kind of a pot of kind of ideas and concepts to start generating an idea for a building from, it's me.
Yeah.
I really know what it is he's attracted to.
Right.
Growing up in New Jersey, the home we lived in the siding was blue, the trim was red, and the shutters were yellow. And that was our house. And like people, my friends called it the crazy color house. People in our town knew it as the crazy colored house. And that's just because my dad loves color. It's a big part of him, and it brings him happiness and joy just deep down. And he's always wearing colorful Hawaiian shirts, and he loves painting rooms bright, bold colors. It just makes him happy. So coming into this project, I knew color had to be somewhere in it. And you know, the challenging thing is you know, if I had to pick a location that I felt would be perfect for my dad, I would choose somewhere in the Caribbean.
Right.
You know, the aesthetic that he likes is very Caribbean-esque.
Yep.
So if he moved there, I could design a house like that. It would be easy.
So there's a little bit of a challenge to this because it's this main island aesthetic with your dad's personality.
Right. So bringing my dad's aesthetic here to a site in Maine in itself was a design challenge, because I didn't want to ignore the local typology. Like you have to respect that to some level.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't want to just build a typical 4-wall pitched roof home. I obviously wanted it to be something more modern, a twist on that, let's say.
Right.
And at the same time, I had to find a way to incorporate color into it. It was the only way that I'd get him to sign off on the house. Because if I didn't, I'd come back 6 months from now and it would be painted a million colors.
Right.
So I either embrace it at the beginning, or I'm going to be forced, my hand's going to be forced later down the road. So it was important to kind of think about how to design color into this project from the beginning, and make it fit within the region that this home is being designed in. I feel like architecture is very site specific, even if you look at this home and is kind of has its contemporary angles and seems from certain areas, like you said, it looks a little bit like a spaceship that's kind of just
Well, yeah, like this side of the house over here, if you just frame that side, it's very bold and almost like a stealth fighter type of shape.
Exactly.
But then you compare it to the other side, and this very classic, New England shape arises out of it. So it's very dimorphic. Is that the right word? I don't know, but it incorporates both the classic New England and that kind of twist on it, which is really neat.
Exactly. Yeah, I wanted it to kind of just be an interpretation of this kind of New England lobster shack. Mm-hmm. That's kind of my take on it, or how I describe it to people. This island, to kind of give you a little more background about the island itself. Idaho, there's my dad told us in the car today, 47 year-round residents that stay through the winter. Yeah. I think there's a few dozen more that come back for the summer, but the population is under 80. Yeah. And the lifers here on the island, they're primarily lobster fishermen. Right. So everyone that's kind of working on the island is in the lobster fishing industry. Mm-hmm. And that kind of gave the direction for the aesthetic of the house. There's buoys everywhere in the water. When you take the ferry out to here, you see them. Yeah. It's a huge part of this region's livelihood. And the lobster fishermen, when they kind of bring in their buoys from the season, they hang them up on the sides of their homes. That's how they store them. Right. So that kind of led the aesthetic for the exterior direction of this house. Yeah. So the kind of the alignment of the colors and the batten board siding is a interpretation of the lobster fishermen's buoys hanging on the sides of their homes. Yeah, that's cool. In the off season. So the buoy was how I took color and applied it to the house, and that was my to make it to kind of pull from the local typology and the kind of culture of the region, have that color story, and then apply it to the architecture.
Yeah, no, I like that. That's well thought out. That's really cool. So talk me through some of the difficulties in designing for an island home and building on an island, and also the solar and green portion of this that you had built in as well.
I'll start with the challenges, and I'll break that up into two parts. The challenges of designing and building from afar. I did all of this while I was in Los Angeles, and early on I made the decision that when I was helping my dad look for contractors, that I really needed to find a contractor instead of going through the traditional vetting process, perhaps, where you would interview 4 contractors and kind of compare prices and kind of go off of that. I went in a direction where I was looking at contractors' work, which I think people also do, but I wanted to find a contractor that I saw a kind of consistency in his finished product, and that was very high level, so that I knew I could have faith in letting the contractor kind of make decisions on his own in the field. Right. Because I wouldn't be there weekly to kind of do site walks and kind of answer questions and be that hands-on. So that's how we ended up picking the contractor that we did. But even still in that, getting, site photographs every other week, where I'm seeing things framed and I'm like, oh God, that wasn't supposed to be that way, but they're like 10 steps down the road from that. So there were a lot of things I'm very happy with how the house turned out, but there were just things along the road that I was like, oh, that wasn't really supposed to be like that. And I just kind of had to learn to live with it or kind of design around it. Right. So that was the challenge of working from afar. The challenge of building on an island, that comes with a whole set of other, if you think that every material that went into this house came over here on a boat, a tiny boat even, that just means every nail, every board, every piece of insulation had basically a surcharge to it, an extra cost of bringing it out on a boat.
Did you go on the common boat that comes across, or did you have to?
A combination. A few things came out on that common boat, and a lot of big things came out on barges.
Yeah.
So that's added value because you have to rent out a barge and you have to take all that material to where the barge is docked to bring it out to here. The craziest day for me when I look at the construction photographs is seeing. So this is on concrete stem wall foundation, just sitting on bedrock, which I think is fascinating because you can't do that in most other places.
Our house is like that. It's just on absolute. It's granite.
It's
like
crazy.
Right,
like you don't have to drill down. There's no caissons. There's no piles. There's no footings. Like the house is literally
granite.
a part of the earth.
Yeah.
But the day that the concrete trucks came out, they had to barge out 5 concrete trucks.
How do they do that? You got a timer on those trucks.
You have a timer on the trucks. So they barged out, I know this is going to be a fact check thing, but I think they barged out 3 and then they barged out 2 more immediately after. I don't think that there were 2 barges. But they crammed as many on that first barge. So there's this crazy shot of one of the concrete trucks hanging halfway off the back of the barge. Like its rear 2 tires are just in the air. And I just think it's the crazy. If I was there, I would just be so anxious the entire day, just staring at that boat going across.
Right. Just looking at the wheels.
Exactly. But then they had a huge concrete pumping machine out here and they got all the concrete in. It was pouring rain that day because it's Maine. And
it was pouring rain the day they poured our house as well.
It's just like the one day you wish it's just dry and it wasn't.
No.
So it's like little things like that, like the simple things of just, I need a concrete truck to come here and pour this foundation today. No, we had to time that with the barges and the weather and the pumper needs to be out here that day. You get all that equipment over here, you have to do the work, then you have to get all the equipment off the island. So, I mean,
how much if you take, is it like a doubling of the price of construction?
I would say it's a doubling, easily a doubling. This would have been 50% less on the mainland, I would say. So certainly a premium to live on an island.
Yeah, but just getting out here is just so beautiful. And then once you're out here, it's just...
Well, you were saying it when you drove out here. It's almost like the process of getting to the island feels like part of the escape. So it's not even just being here.
I mean, just even driving over the Penobscot Bridge, all of a sudden you're like, something's different. And then like that drive from there down to Stonington is just, it's just something about it. Really, it feels like real Maine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like there's Maine that the rest of the country thinks is Maine, and then there's when you get really truly down east and everything else, it has that just deep down feel to it that's just totally different. It seems like I remember seeing a National Geographic article, I think about Isle Ho back when I was a kid. And I've really looked forward to, like, someday I knew I'd get a job out here, hopefully, to get out here. I'm very excited to be out here. So yeah, it's and a really cool project. Love the incorporation of color, the views here that you've oriented the house, the homeowner, great guy. And so you incorporated solar into this, and you're feeding back into the grid, actually.
Yeah. So because it's on an island, because not only is the island remote, but the property's remote. The goal was to have a very self-sufficient home. The initial kind of design intent was to be completely off the grid. So we have solar electric and we have solar hot water here. And the panel that we have covers all the electrical needs for the house. But, as we were kind of going through the design process, as we were sizing the system, the kind of debate about whether or not to have a battery system came up. And, in discussion with my dad, he was concerned about, the quantity of gray days that we have up here in the Northeast. There was a fear that he could run out of electricity. And because the island does have a power system, he felt more comfortable hooking the house up to that as a backup. Now, the way the PV system is set up, he can feed back into the grid, into the city's power. And he does that, on a forever basis. He's never using more power than what is created through the panels. So he's always giving back to the island, which I guess is nice.
Yeah, that's cool.
And, the water here is from a well just over here. So, and we have septic. So the house in itself, other than just him feeding power back to the city, it's all self-contained. So, and then from a design standpoint, because we were doing the active solar, there are some passive solar strategies that I worked into the design, knowing that, this home was also for my stepmom, Ellen. She loves plants. She's total green thumb, horticulturist. So I knew that this house was going to be filled with plants. So the orientation of the house that faces south, this kind of east-west bar, we created this, we needed a hallway to get down to the bedrooms, so we doubled the hallway as a greenhouse. So it's a little wider so that Ellen can have all of her plants in there facing south. And then the back wall of the greenhouse acts as a trum wall. So how that works is that, the sun spills into the sunroom throughout the course of the day, heating up the tile on the floor and on the wall. And then the back walls of the hallway that have the bedrooms on the other side. There's windows up top and there's vents down at the bottom. So at night you open all the windows, and then just natural circulation will draw the cool air, the hot air into the bedrooms. The cool air comes out down back into the greenhouse, and it just kind of circulates and heats there. So that's a passive heating system that I worked into the design. Great. Yeah. So those are just a few examples of some of the things that, from an energy efficiency standpoint, off the grid design we worked in.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And now you're also another step going out on your own now as well, and using what will be amazing photographs to help propel that into the future and great success, I'm sure. But going out on your own, talk to me about your fears, hopes, dreams, paranoias. That's a big step.
Yeah, no, it certainly is, and there's lots of emotion in it for sure. Mostly excitement, but definitely some fears. I actually am starting this new company with my partner Lewis, and for me, we were talking about the difference earlier about kind of leaving on your own versus leaving with a partner. And I don't know if it's just because it's the beginning, but I can say that I am much more comfortable that I have left with a partner. I like the idea that I'm starting a business, and everything involved with starting that business, I have someone who's equally invested in it that I can bounce ideas off of, and we can help each other kind of grow the business, instead of me just being an individual that's making decisions and not being able to bounce ideas off of somebody else.
In a vacuum.
You're in a vacuum, exactly. We have each other to kind of say, hey, wait a minute, Noel. Like Lewis can say, wait a minute, I don't think that that's right for X, Y, and Z. I think it's better if we do this. Then I can take a moment and reflect on whatever decision I was about to make and say, wait a minute, you're right. Thank God I didn't do that. And for that reason, I can't speak for Lewis, but I'm happy that I have him for that reason. Now, it is a little... there are some challenges leaving with a partner. We were discussing, how do you know you've found the right person to leave with? I think there's a big difference between leaving with a friend of yours that maybe you went to school with and you haven't worked with together, and you're like, hey, you're my best friend, let's start working together.
Hey, let's ruin our friendship by trying to make money together.
Exactly, which a lot of people have warned Lewis and I about.
Yeah.
But in that scenario, while you're starting your own business, you're learning how you work with this person, and there's huge risk in that. Lewis and I had the opportunity to work together for the past 6 years, and we kind of grew our working relationship in in that kind of professional environment. And we were able to see how we worked with one another. And I think part of the reason of the two of us leaving and us leaving together is us seeing how well we work together with each other. And, you know, I think the working kind of relationship we had at our previous firm, where I was the design director and Louis was working on the design team with me. You know, we were kind of like a mini studio within the office, and pretty much all the projects kind of filtered through our team. And Louis and I got to design all these projects together. So we really kind of saw how we kind of aided each other in kind of different aspects of design. Louis's focus was primarily on the kind of development of interior architecture at our old company, and my focus was more on the kind of bigger picture architecture of the building itself. So in the design team, you know, I'll be kind of coming up with ideas for the building, and I'll say, Louis, what do you think? And he'll kind of jump in and give me his thoughts and ideas, you know. And then vice versa, Louis will be working on interiors and be kind of putting together this bathroom and say, no, what do you think of this, you know, this vanity, you know, what? And I'd be like, well, I think maybe you should float the, so I'd give him input on hit the work.
Which I love the mood boards that like interior designers will come up with.
Yes.
Like I'd never really worked on one of those, and I never worked in an office long enough to really do one.
Right.
But to see one done is just, to me, has always been really interesting to see the color relations and the textile material, the tactile environment, and the tile. Like it's really cool. But
exactly. No. I mean, I think the reason why I know Louis and I are a really good fit, and I think that our company will do well moving forward, is that we're both passionate about residential architecture. That's a shared kind of vision that we have for our company. We really want to kind of give people and I know a lot of people probably say this about their companies, but you know, a holistic approach where we're giving someone, you know, from start to finish, we're working on helping you find the home, kind of conceptualizing what you can build on the lot, helping you design the home, doing the interiors. Do you want to design furniture? Let's design your furniture together. So we're kind of nuts and bolts from A to Z for residential. So that we know is our focus. Now, you know, Louis will be working on the interiors and ask me for input down the road. And then I'll be working on the exteriors and I'll ask Louis for input. So it's kind of like we know our strengths, but we're always working together. And we're always kind of questioning what the other person's doing, not to be a dick, but to kind of just grow each other's product.
That cross-pollination.
Cross-pollinate, exactly.
In a good way.
I mean, it's our company, we're in this together. We want to push each other. We don't want to just say, that's your thing, you do that, you figure it out. I'm going to be over here figuring out my thing.
You go do creative, I'm doing the numbers kind of thing. It's a little bit more,
but
there's definitely two different creative parts of that are always kind of separate, but inescapably put together, which are the interior design and architecture and the kind of floor plan layout, exterior and all that, and the massing. And that's kind of neat that you guys are coming at this, having these two different areas covered, but then now you're gonna have to get a third guy to be all business and everything.
I mean, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I 100% yes, because it's crazy. Like when you go off on your own and you start seeing how much time is required for other aspects of a business.
Just social media marketing and like normal marketing. And now you have social media marketing and that whole new thing of social media marketing, having a YouTube channel, Instagram, all of that. Like just maintaining an Instagram channel, you know, account is just, it's a lot, you know, but so to do it, as we were talking earlier, I've seen a lot of architects go from like, that's ridiculous, I'm not doing that, to like, most of our inquiries are coming through Instagram. People seeing our stuff and like commenting and then following up. And I think that's just a result of, you know, people go through a time in their, you know, 20s, 30s, where mid to late 30s are like, some of them start to make it and are able to hire people like yourself. and they're going to start to dream, and they're going to do that through following, the kind of accounts that are, publishing those kind of things. It's not that people are really flipping through magazines as much anymore. That person who's managing a hedge fund that, really wants that house in Santa Monica or wherever is going to be like, I'm going to start following some house just to get house ideas. I'm going to follow, and they're going to see these hashtags and they're going to follow them, and then their wife or husband or whoever is going to be doing that, and then they're going to land on you, and it's going to be because you manage that. It's just like that one more added thing in your of doing all the stuff that you already do.
Exactly. It's like, where does the design come in? I've got to be doing the marketing. I have to be doing the business development, the graphic design,
which is fun, but
every bit of it is fun. It's just, there's so many more kind of aspects to starting and growing a business than I perhaps realized. And, we were kind of talking earlier about getting into it, knowing when is the right time to kind of jump and kind of do your own thing. I don't think there is a right time. I mean, I think you just have to, because I was convinced or telling myself when you're 40, go off on your own. But why did I pick 40? I mean, I'm 35 now. I'm as capable of doing this now as I would be when I'm 40. So why wait 5 years? Why not just jump in?
You'd have 5 years more security that you have to break at
exactly.
that point,
it would be
honestly.
so much harder. It would be so much harder to do this. So it's more it's just kind of that sink or swim. You just jump in and you just believe that everything will work out. And
work like hell.
And work like hell, yeah. You can't just do nothing and hope everything works out.
I'm not getting out of bed today because I believe it's going to work out.
Exactly. But yeah, I think, the timing was right for both Louis and I. I think we really had come into, as designers, finding a really strong voice for ourselves. And it was hard, having to kind of speak that voice through somebody else, through another firm. And I think we kind of grew out of our, cage, grew out of our little fish tank, and we needed to kind of explore what's out there. So I think that was kind of the reason why we left, was just to kind of discover where we could go, what we could do with our designs if it was just us.
Right.
So that's kind of the...
but it's never just you. Now you're going to have clients pushing back, and then you're going to be thinking bottom line. And so
I know.
That whole balance.
I'm already starting to think that.
Yeah. So to throw a little bit of a curveball philosophical question at you,
sure.
What do you base, design is such a interesting problem-solving visual, there's so many aspects to it that involve just the experience of being human. What is the most foundational thing you can come to that informs the decisions that you make as you design? What's it all come back to,
I mean, I think that's a great question. For me, it always comes back to the client. I can't design in a bubble. I need to have someone, or I need to basically have a prompt. And that prompt is my client. I want to sit down with them. I want to get to know them. I want to know what restaurants they like to eat at. I want to know where they love to travel. What kind of sports do they like to do? What kind of who they are as a person defines their aesthetic, and that aesthetic is the guidelines that tell me how to design for that one person. So for me, I'm always thinking about that client. I'm never like, this is the Noel Lewis show and you're going to get a house that we like because that's what you came here for. You're going to get a product of ours. No, I think how I envision design, how we envision our design philosophy as a company is that the client is the person that directs where their home, where their design will go. I mean, that's for me the fundamental basis of good design.
What is the ideal client for you?
The ideal client. I don't know. I feel like my knee-jerk reaction would be like a client that lets me do whatever. But actually, that's too easy.
Right.
I thrive on challenges. I don't mind a difficult client. And case in point, my dad. He was a challenging client. And, you know, those are the perfect clients. Those are the fun clients because I feel like they generate a project, a home, a design, a piece of architecture that, you know, really pushes my limits as a designer. Like I could look at it and say, well, shit, I would have never done that on my own. I would have never come up with that unless I had this crazy client who had all these kind of
this crazy need for color.
Yeah.
But how do you work that into a main aesthetic? And then you find these buoys on houses and you put it on there, and that's
I don't know
really
if
cool.
I ever would have designed a home in Maine. I mean, I had an inkling I was going to eventually design a home for my dad. But like, you know, these are things that traditionally I wouldn't have gravitated towards, but I was kind of pushed into this design challenge, and it created something that I'm very proud of. And I look at it and I say, wow, I can't believe that I took all of these kind of, you know, these little kind of pieces that wouldn't necessarily, you would think would belong together, but somehow they just fit and they feel right, and they feel right on the site, they feel right for the client. And that I love seeing.
What, to not get too emotional about it, but like what's that experience like designing and like giving of yourself for your father like that? Because that's such a deep relationship. You know, I mean, I look at it now as a father, and to just be outside, like when we were shooting.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, a 35-year-old man going, Dad! You know, my boys are always outside, you know, doing something, and someone gets hit, and he, Dad! You know. But I can't imagine, like, for them to someday do something like this, give of themselves and so much of their personal
So you're thinking
creativity.
about your kids
Oh,
one
I'm
day
in
designing
dad
a home
position.
for you?
Well, just that connection. It's a really beautiful thing to see, and to see the relationship, and to see the care that you have for your father, and the interaction that you have with your father. And just when we spoke on the phone when I was out in California, when you first contacted me, you know, describing your father, and I was like, I got to meet this guy. He sounds really cool, you know. Have you even thought about it like that depth of, you know, giving, you know, you're designing for daddy, you know, it's like, that's deep.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it has, so I said we started this 9-10 years ago. It has been a long 9-10 years. It's been, this has been a kind of labor of love for the two of us. You know, we've had arguments about the design. We've had things where he stood his ground, things where I've stood our ground. Yeah. And, you know, I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. And I think it just kind of, I don't know if it necessarily changed our relationship, but I feel like, you know, it definitely, it brought us closer. It gave us, you know, I moved 3,000 miles away. Yeah. I'm in LA, he's here in Maine. And this kind of gave us something to stay connected with. Right. And that I was really happy to have. And then also, you know, just sitting, you know, the 2 days leading up, kind of cleaning the house, getting it ready for our shoot today, and kind of sitting here last night and looking at the house and kind of finally getting to breathe now that we were done. Right. And I was just like thinking, I used to come out here as a kid, and now I'm sitting here with my dad, having dinner in this beautiful home that's now on this island that I designed for him to retire in. Like, there were just so many aspects of it. I mean, it could have been the wine that I was drinking, but yes, then I was like getting emotional thinking about it, because it's, when I really was just kind of like sitting with that thought, I was like, holy shit, like,
this is something.
This is when I was a little kid running around on the rocks down there, I never thought 20 years later that I would be here sitting in this house. or a house like this. And that to me is just really kind of crazy to think about. And, you know, even outside of that, you know, I remember the first time I came out here to meet with the contractor and kind of showed my dad this final design. And, you know, I was having this conversation with him. You know, we were sitting at a restaurant and he was kind of looking at it from a very numbers point of view, like most clients do.
Yeah.
And I was looking at it kind of from a future like standpoint, like, and I had this is basically the conversation that I had. I was like, Dad, you know, I'm investing a lot in this. Like, you know, I'm putting a lot of my blood, sweat, and tears into this project. I'm doing it for you, but I'm also doing it for me too. Like, this could be the start of something big for me in the future, and I want your house to be that for me. And it's weird for me. I've been thinking about it since I flew back, to think that I had told my dad that one day I hope this house could help be the start of a new chapter of my life. And it essentially is. You know, I am having you come out here to photograph it, and those photographs are gonna then go out into the world, and people are gonna be like, whoa, that house is so crazy cool, let me learn more about it and the company that designed it. And like, you know, it's all like everything's falling into place, and it's like, what? I had this dream that like this house, like all the work I put into it would pay off some way.
It is such a weird thing. Like I taught high school in the Marshall Islands for 2 years, and I did it because, well, I was there considering, do I want to be a teacher or do I want to do something else someday, and what do I want to do?
Right.
And it was weird. My other options, like being an architect, but what I envisioned what I would be doing are much more similar to what I'm actually doing now. But it's creepy, the degree at which my life resembles what I envisioned back then. And it almost freaks me out, like we are plugged into the matrix and they're just feeding us what, like, you know, I hear about all these things going wrong with other people,
right?
But how's it, you know, working out for me so well? But I'm, you know, I don't even like saying those things, because it's like, then it's like, well, it's out there, it might not go, you know. But yeah, it's
maybe it's
creepy.
like that the secret thing. Like if you say it enough and you believe in it, then it kind of like wills it into happening.
Well, there's definitely something to, like, you have a dream, you plan on, all right, I'm going to work towards that dream. When you start to tell other people, what you do is you plant that seed in other people's heads that then check back in on you and like, hey, how's that thing
going?
Were you just lying, or were you actually going to? No, I'm doing it. I'm doing that with a documentary right now that I'm 4 years late on.
Ooh,
so
well, see, now I can now ask you about that.
Yeah, I've got a room full of like sticky notes and yeah, but I'm honestly, it's just that I'm scared right now to do it. So that's the only reason that's holding me back on that. So
it's fear. That's what holds most people back.
Yeah.
I mean, you were asking me, you know, like, you know, if for people wondering like about how to kind of move to the next step or starting their own business, I think, you know, the one kind of piece of advice, and I gave this to, you know, all the people, all the employees that I had, that I kind of mentored at my last job, was that I think the biggest hurdle for architects in general, especially young architects growing into their own, is kind of finding their confidence as a designer. I think, you know, with architecture being such a creative field, or design in general, there's just a lot of hesitation about whether or not what's in my head is good enough.
Oh yeah, 100%. That's like 90% of why I'm not even trying to finish the documentary at this point, like putting anything even down on paper, because it's like, to be good creatively, you have to be very critical.
Yes.
Self-critical.
Absolutely.
And then you see everyone else being highly opinionated and critical. So it's very risky to put your ideas out there.
It is.
Because you see them get torn apart.
It's emotional.
It's giving of yourself to put that out there. It's really hard.
And it is. It's very hard. But you have to start doing it and let yourself put your designs out there and allow yourself to be critiqued, so that you can grow, and through that growing, you'll find your voice and find enough people say, that's bad, but that's good. Do more of that.
Right.
And then you do more of that. And then when you present those ideas, people are like, wow, that's good. And then you start saying, oh, I know what I'm doing. I know that that's good. I'm going to keep doing that.
Right.
So it's at that moment that you then say, I believe in myself. What I produce, what I sketch is good. And therefore, I am going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Right.
That's that turning point when you turn into a good architect, and then you can go off on your own. If you're full of all that doubt and like you haven't like gained that confidence as a designer yet, obviously you're not ready to kind of go off on your own.
Right.
You need to kind of
it might be that someone's a good designer, but they may not have psychologically also made that step as well, I wonder?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. There's tons of, there's so many great designers out there that are just waiting to kind of find their voice, to get those ideas out of their head and like have the world see them, praise them, tell them that's good, keep doing more of that. I hope everyone gets that opportunity, because so many people have that fear that you talked about of being criticized that keeps all those ideas in. Then nobody gets to see them. So I am always, like all the kind of young architects that I got to mentor at my last job, always pushing them. Don't worry about things being wrong. Just get stuff out of your head. Just always be drawing. Never think that isn't right. Just get it out. Just start just mental diarrhea your drawings. Get it out, and just then step back and look at it.
Writers will kind of do that. I've heard that I can't write to save my life, but they'll say like, just start typing, even gibberish at some point, but then start thinking and writing, and then and just keep I found when we studied abroad for a year during architecture school, my first sketches were just like what does a third grader do this?
Exactly.
And by the end I was like, oh, there's that, here it is now. And I was just the practice and the muscle memory was incredible. That when I get people contacting me about photography that are starting out, I kind of say a similar thing where I tell them you're going to learn the most from your failures.
Yes.
But you have to be brave enough to fail. You have to be brave enough to get the feedback from people who know what they're talking about. I'll usually try and tell them, first of all, thank you for, reaching out, because you're taking what you've created and you're putting it out there. And now I'm going to be brutally honest with you, and you need to be okay with that. Because first of all, I don't know you, and I'm not going to coddle you, and that's not going to help you. But you have to understand that this is a process of attempting to do something and being open to knowing what's good and what's bad. And just because part of it was bad, doesn't mean it's all bad. It means that you have a voice, and it's the refining of that voice to get to that part that is uniquely you, that you can then start to grow and flourish. And you're just cutting off, you're refining that, and that's okay. And I usually tell people it's really extra hard for architects, because they've got to get people to invest tons of money to actually prove that they're doing this. With a photographer, it's a little bit easier. You've got to buy all the equipment to be able to do what you do. It's not as like an architect as much so. But if you're getting paid to do something, cover all the bases that you have to do, but always push a little bit beyond into failure, because you might find some real gems in there. Make sure you cover your bases and cover the beyond that the client's expecting, but throw some stuff in there that's just a little out of left field that you think might be good. No one's going to get hurt if you take a bad picture, especially after you've covered the bases that everyone's expecting. I tell people, always push yourself into that realm of possible failure in the most controlled environments as possible. And see what you can do. See what you can make out of that. Get some feedback, and when you land on those jewels, really keep them. But those, failure in any instance is just such an opportunity to learn. And it's kind of similar with surfing. I've said this, I think, with someone before on a podcast, so sorry if I'm repeating myself. But you'll surf and you'll think you're doing real well, And then you'll see video of yourself and you're like, whoa, what did I do there? It's like dance, you know, and then you do this move, it just doesn't look right, you know, and you see it in video and it gets painted into your mind. Yeah. And then when you go to ride a wave again, you have that in your mind and you do the same movement, and there's something in your psyche that says, don't move like that, remember? Yeah. And then you kind of smooth it out a bit and you don't do that again.
Right.
It's the same thing like with photography, with architecture. When you find something that's, you know, a failure, it's only a failure really if you don't learn from it. And learning from those instances, those, you know, bad business partnerships that I've made go wrong, or other things. Those are the things that really help define for yourself personally how you can continue to do great work and move on from those. And so
exactly, I love that.
Yeah, I think we should always be pushing. I mean, I'm the one who's always trying things and failing when surfing, and I was. It's an excuse for me just not being that good of a surfer. I'm like, well, I'm just trying harder than you guys, you know, but whatever. So the last thing to kind of wrap this up, when you approach, for those of us who are watching that are primarily interested in photography,
sure.
When you come to looking at, all right, who do I want to shoot my work? I mean, obviously you chose me. We don't need to go into like praising Trent in any way, shape, or form. But like as an architect, what are you looking for when you look for a photographer to represent your work?
Sure. Well, I'm fairly new to this, so finding you was my kind of first foray into thinking about what you just asked me. Being based in LA, there's a group of photographers, like just a cache that you can pick from. But you know, knowing that the house was in Maine, I knew I wanted to kind of find someone who knows how to shoot in the region. I do think that, you know, there are some really great photographers out there, but I don't think I would take an architectural photographer from Los Angeles and fly him to a different state. I mean,
what are all these bugs on?
Exactly, I know, fuck. But the lighting and the weather and the conditions, it's just, someone in LA wouldn't know how to deal with them like you did today. We did have some challenging weather conditions.
We've gotten really cool kind of fog images and sun images, which is really cool.
I'm so happy with everything. But you know, my instinct, because I've always been on shoots that have always been clear, and if there's an inkling of it not being clear, the shoot is rescheduled. So when I saw the weather today, like my instinct was, this is going to be miserable, this is going to be a failure. But there was a part of me that was comfortable, because I knew when I was looking for work for a photographer, you know, I saw your work in some magazines, and there was a variety of weather conditions. Not that that was the only reason why I chose you. But you know, I could tell that you can shoot under a variety of conditions, and I think,
man, you don't even know.
And I'm sure I only saw a portion of it, but you know, I saw some incredible moody shots that were so different from every other photographer that I had seen. So to your point, what you just said about, you know, telling people to take shots that are risky, I saw something in your photographs that I hadn't seen from other photographers, and that is important for me, because I want my project to stand out from the millions of architectural photographs that are out there. There's so many highly polished, super saturated photographs of completed buildings out there that, yeah, they look nice, but they're not memorable.
Right.
So I'm an architect now, you know, starting my own firm with my partner. We are going to be designing some incredible, I'm hoping, unique, memorable buildings that equally need to be documented in the same way.
Right.
They need to be shot artistically. They need to be shot differently. We don't want them to look like every other architectural photograph out there. So that's what I'm looking for. when it comes to
that's interesting. That I wouldn't have thought that was a contributor to our portfolio at all. The variety of mood and weather, like, and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can totally see where, coming from your position, is like the weather can be an unknown. We're already booking this day on an island. This is an aspect that you would consider.
Yeah,
that makes total
absolutely.
sense.
Yeah.
We've worked in some, like, we've done shoots in Las Vegas where they're like still putting in trim just outside of frame, and there's dust, and it's just like, yeah, it's crazy some of the circumstances we shot in, as far as weather to different earlier this year we shot in Connecticut in January, like probably 2 full days outside. I was in a full, and we were doing videography. I was in a full like snowmobile outfit, like 4 layers, and just that was,
oh my God, that sounds miserable.
and it was on a lake, and the wind's coming off the lake, and yeah, it was interesting. But well, thanks for taking the time to sit down and talk about all this. It's really interesting. I'm really excited for, what's your favorite image do you think we've gotten so far? We've done primarily just exteriors so far.
Just did exterior. As much as I loathed them maybe this morning, I'm most excited for the fog shots. And that was, I've seen some of your, architectural photography in fog, and that was things that I loved. But when I was coming out here, I didn't want that for myself, even though I kind of did. But I didn't want to only have that as an option. So, this morning I was a little like, these are cool, but I hope the sun comes out. But now that we have the sun shots too, I'm like, you were right.
Fog ones are going to be unique.
You were like, no, don't worry. The fog, it's so cool. It's better gray. I was like, oh God, what are you telling me? And then, but now that, but see, the thing is, now that I have options and now I could see the two side by side, I'm like,
well, it's that thing of you cover your bases and then you experiment. And we kind of had to experiment first and then cover our bases. Luckily, which is nice. But I really like that, the straight on with the 2-track coming out and the truck pulling in. We got a great old Chevy dent in the front, and then this great colorful house. So I'm pretty excited about that.
The dichotomy of the two. Yeah. The old and the new, the dented and the
Well, it just reeks of island. Like, if you've been to an island in Maine, there's island cars.
Yep.
This is
the beat up junkers.
Yeah, like Peaks Island and everything else. They just have island cars. So, well, very cool. Thank you so much for hiring us to come out here. I'm super stoked to be out on Idaho finally, and it's lived up and surpassed my expectations. And I would say I'd even take it over Monhegan so far. Monhegan, Vinyl Haven, North Haven, and Idaho are probably the top 4 islands in Maine that I've been to. I think they're super cool.
Glad this made the cut.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. Well, thanks so much. Thanks so much for watching, and those of you who are listening. And you can check out Noel Fedosh on Instagram at
LUNO Design Studio.
And then online
our website is lunodesignstudio.com. LUNO.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And cut.